Okay, picture this. It's the 1980s and American industry is, well, it's in serious trouble. And right into that chaos step three absolute titans, Deming, Juran, and Crosby. These guys were the gurus who would completely reshape modern business. But here's the thing. They all wanted to fix the same problem, but their ideas, they clashed, big time. It sparked one of the most important debates in management history, and we're going to dive right in. And boom, that quote from W. Edwards Deming, it just says it all, doesn't it? This wasn't some academic exercise about making slightly better toasters. This was about survival. And Deming, he wasn't messing around. He pointed the finger for this whole industrial mess right at the corner office, at top management. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll meet the gurus and see how they were all staring at the same problem. Then we'll dig into how they couldn't even agree on what quality is. We'll ask who's responsible for it, check out the different tools they used, and then get to the big one. Is the goal perfection? And finally, we'll wrap it all up and see what their great debate means for you today. Right, so let's set the stage. American companies are on the ropes, getting pummeled. And in walk these three doctors, each one holding a totally different prescription, a different cure for the exact same disease. So let's meet our heavyweights. First up, you've got W. Edwards Deming. The guy's a statistician, a total legend in Japan for decades before anyone in America really listened to him. His whole thing? Use data, use stats, to make everything you do more consistent. Then there's Joseph M. Juran. He's the seasoned executive, the consultant. He saw quality as something you manage, with formal systems and big company-wide projects. And finally, Philip Crosby. He was a VP of quality at a huge company, ITT. And for him, the problem wasn't stats or systems. It was culture. It was all about rewiring the mindset of the entire organization to demand nothing less than perfection. And here is where the debate gets really fundamental. You'd think, right? Three world-famous quality gurus. They must have agreed on what the word quality actually means. Nope, not even close. It turns out their definitions were worlds apart. For Deming, quality was all about being predictable. It was about crushing variation so that your process churns out the exact same result, time after time. Juran, on the other hand, he looked at it from the outside in. His definition was fitness for use. In other words, who cares how consistent it is if it doesn't do what the customer actually needs it to do? And then you have Crosby, the purist. For him, quality was simple. Conformance to requirements. Did you build it exactly to the blueprint? It didn't matter if it was a cheap car or a luxury car. If it met the specs, it was a quality product. Period. Okay, so if they couldn't agree on what quality is, where do you think they stood on whose job it was to deliver it? Yep. You guessed it. Now the finger-pointing really begins. Deming really dropped a bomb with what he called the 85-15 rule. He argued pretty forcefully that 85% of all your quality problems come from the system itself. Things like bad processes, cheap materials, worn-out machines. He called these common causes, and he said they were 100% management's problem to fix. Only a tiny 15% were special causes. Things you could actually trace back to a specific worker making a mistake. And you can really see how their different philosophies played out here. Deming put management in charge of changing the whole system, but, and this is key, he wanted to empower the workers on the front line with statistical tools to solve problems right then and there. Juran also saw management leading big breakthrough projects, but the workers' role kind of limited. It was more about the systems around them. And Crosby, well, for him, management had one big job, set an impossible standard, 0 defects. And the worker's job was basically to raise their hand when something got in the way of meeting it. So, okay, we get the philosophies, but how did these guys propose we actually do this stuff? What were the tools in the toolkit? Well, surprise, surprise, their tools were just as different as their ideas. It really boiled down to a battle between statistics, systems, and slogans. At the absolute core of everything Deming preached was this one tool, Statistical Process Control, or SPC. This was his secret weapon. It's basically a way to use data to tell the difference between the normal random noise in any process and a signal that means, hey, something's actually broken and you need to fix it. And the main tool for SPC is the control chart. It's really just a simple graph that tracks your process data over time. As long as your data points are bouncing around between the upper and lower control limits, everything's cool, the process is stable. But the second a point flies outside those limits, that's your signal. It tells the worker on the floor that something is wrong. It gives them the power, based on data, to know exactly when to step in. And, just as important, when to leave the process alone and not mess with it. Juran, he came at it from a totally different angle. He was smart. He knew that if you really want to get management's attention, you have to speak their language. And what language is that? Money. His cost of quality idea was genius. It took all the hidden costs of bad quality, things like scrap, rework, warranty claims, inspections, and put them on a spreadsheet for everyone to see. It made the problem impossible to ignore. Now, Crosby's main tool, it wasn't a chart, it wasn't a spreadsheet, it was a mirror. His management maturity grid was basically a self-assessment for the C-suite. It forced them to look at their own attitudes and thinking, and it laid out a path. You start at stage 1, uncertainty, where you're basically saying, we have problems, but we have no clue why. And you move all the way to stage 5, certainty, where quality is so baked into your DNA that you know precisely why you don't have problems anymore. It was a roadmap for changing minds. So all of this, all these different definitions and tools, it all builds to this one final massive question, the philosophical climax of the whole debate. What are we actually trying to achieve here? Is quality a never-ending journey of improvement, or is it a destination called perfection? On this, they were completely divided. Juran, always the pragmatist, said, look, there's a point of optimal cost. He believed that trying to get that last, final, tiny defect out of the system costs a fortune. It becomes uneconomical. Absolute perfection to him was a waste of money. Crosby, on the other hand, just completely rejected that. For him, the only goal that made any sense, the only standard worth having, was 0 defects. And that belief led to his most famous, most provocative, and most brilliant slogan, quality is free. Now, what did he mean by that? He meant that whatever money you spend on preventing mistakes, on training, on better tools, on building the right culture, it is always less than the money you waste on fixing failures later. So in his mind, prevention isn't a cost. It's the single best investment a company can possibly make. So who won? Who was right in the end? Maybe that's the wrong question. After all the clashing and all the debate, what are we left with? Let's step back and see how all their ideas actually fit together to create a legacy. Here's the fascinating part. For all their disagreements, they all agreed on the really big stuff. Every single one of them believed that preventing problems is way better than inspecting for them later. The top management absolutely has to lead the charge. That quality is a massive competitive advantage. That you need the whole organization on board. And that this isn't a quick fix. It's a long-term commitment. That common ground became the foundation for all of modern quality management. And maybe this is the best way to think about their legacy today. Don't think of them as rivals. Think of them as 3 different lenses, 3 different tools you can pull out to fix different problems. If your output is all over the place and your process is unpredictable, you need the Deming lens. You need statistics. If you can't get money for your projects or get management to care, you need the Juran lens. You need to talk systems and cost. And if your biggest problem is that nobody seems to care and expectations are in the basement, then you absolutely need the Crosby lens. You need to focus on culture and mindset. And that, of course, brings it all back to you. Deming, Juran, and Crosby gave us 3 different paths to get better. So the question to leave you with is this. Take a look at your own organization, your own work. Which of those paths are you on right now? And maybe the more important question is it the right one for the problems you're trying to solve today?